let's start off with the fact that I started life off very young. I mean, I was so excited about being born, I couldn't speak for a year. I mean, so, but when I was born, all the way up until my first near-death experience, it wasn't the usual childhood. I was meditating at 18 months, 2 years old. My mother taught me some yoga techniques, and she belonged to Self-Realization Fellowship, which was Paramahansa Yogananda's group. And this was, we're talking 1946, 47, 48, 19, before 50. So it was relatively not an everyday across the world experience. California, a little bit in some areas, but the rest of the world, vegetarianism, yoga, Kriya Yoga, nobody knew what it was, Kundalini energy, all these things, it was new. Karma was like, oh, what's karma? So growing up I was kind of on the edge of that because the 1950s and the late 50s really started to go. So I was at that level of being a young seeker. And I got very, very sick. I was 8.5 years old. We lived in the San Francisco Bay Area in a town called Sunnyvale, which is the birthplace of Silicon Valley. And what do they got there now? Google and all these crazy stuff there. But anyway, at that time, it was just orchards, and dairies, and, fruit trees and all this kind of stuff. And I got sicker and sicker and sicker. And my mother and my stepfather never noticed, I can't get inside their heads, but for some reason, they kept sending me to school sick, and I had the mumps on both sides. And then I had pneumonia in both lungs, and I had pleurisy, and the lungs were filling up. And I had a kidney disease, and I had about 4 or 5 other things. It kept cascading, start off with the mumps, and then that just sets you up for the next organs and next things to fail. So everything was failing. And I was still going to school, and I was looking like a POW. I just all shriveled up. My back was hurting. And the teacher sent me to the nurse back when they used to have nurses in schools. And she goes, "My God, you're really sick. Go home." So they sent me home. And of course, that's the old days, right? They send you home. It's a 2.5 mile walk back home, and you're in the 3rd grade, right? So I get home, and I'm home a couple of weeks, and finally I'm getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And finally my aunt sees me, and she goes, "Oh my God," to my mother, her sister. She goes, "Take him to a doctor." So finally the doctor comes to our house. Now there's something that ages me. House call. Doctors actually went to your house, right? Shows up, and he goes, "Put him in a car. That's it. It's almost too late. Take him to the county hospital." So went to the county hospital. I get there, and it was the first time I was really away from home. In fact, never away from home by myself ever. I was 8.5 years old. I get to the hospital, and they talk to my parents. I hear them mumbling, saying something like, "Well, prepare for the worst because you're bringing them in at the end of this thing," right? There's not much going to happen. So they told me, "It's a little late coming in. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to take you away from your parents." And they put me in a gurney, strap me down, and my parents leave. Now you can imagine nowadays taking a child to the hospital really sick, and the doctors just go to the parents. Parents leave, drive away 20 miles away, and there you are, 8.5 years old, all by yourself. I'm rolling down the aisle, in the hospital, the hallway, and I see all the lights up above shining down on me. It was just a memory I still have. Like, you're strapped down. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going on. All I heard was, "He may not live." That's the only thing I heard from the overheard conversation. So I get down, they take me out to isolation, and they stick these big, huge needles in my back, and they withdraw fluids and more fluids and more fluids. And then when they're done, they just take me to this bed and say, "Okay, get in bed, kid. That's it. Boom." No nurse holding your hand. No comforting. "How are you? Are you okay? Push this button if you need anything." Nothing. Just boom, the lights go off, and there I am laying away from home in a totally pitch black room, having no idea what's going on. And that's where all the magic started. So that was my first night, and I'll talk about it. But that was my first night away from home. I spent approximately 1 year in a hospital, total bed rest, most of the time by myself. No television, no radio, no telephone, no books, no toys, magazines, no newspapers. Most of the time alone, no playmates. Visitors about 10 to 15 minutes once a week. So that's what the beginning of this process was. So a lot of stuff was going to happen. And obviously, looking back on that, you have to realize, being a young 8.5-year-old boy, you're getting ready to face that ordeal for a year. Things are going to happen. Forget the near-death experience. That would change you. But just that alone would change your personality, would change your outlook on life and everything else. So I closed my eyes. And in the dark, you don't know if your eyes are closed or not. It's pitch black, right? Close my eyes, open my eyes, it'll make a difference. And I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, I'm spinning. My head is spinning. Something's going on. I'm dizzy, but I'm also feeling all the pain disappear. Boom, and then I'm feeling light. When I mean light, I mean LIGHT, and light, like lightweight. And because the darkness is kind of getting a little lighter. And I'm actually feeling weightless. That's the word I should be looking for, weightless. And I'm feeling like I weigh zero. I'm just anti-gravity force. It's like I'm being pulled away from my body. And even at that age, I had the know-how sense to realize that wasn't me laying on that bed. That was the body of this young child, but it wasn't me. The real me was above the body. That's what I realized. I go, wait a minute, I'm above that. I'm looking down. So therefore, that can't be me. That's just the shell of me. That's the facade. But that's not the real me. The real me is here. This consciousness that's looking down. This is an 8.5-year-old thinking process, which I thought was, looking back on it, that's pretty amazing, actually. And I just felt this tingly warmth. Picture, because I had an Italian grandmother, picture an Italian grandmother, except multiply it by 1 million. So you got 1 million Italian grandmas getting ready to pinch your cheeks and hug you and kiss you, and they love you, right? Picture 1 million Italian mothers embracing you. That's what it started to feel like. And it was just like, wow, I'm loved. I'm not only loved, I am love. I couldn't see the difference between being loved and loving. It wasn't going out and coming in. It was all one. It was just love. And then I look around at the room, and it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And pretty soon it's like clouds. It's like I'm up in a cloud. There's like this screen of clouds around me. And I began to see a kaleidoscope of seams, which I intuitively knew was the future. And I began to see the next 50 years of my life going forward. Now, what's interesting is most people that you will interview, or if you watch videos at NDEs, most adults, people, they have a near-death. What happens? They go through a tunnel of light, and then they have a review, past life review, right? Oh, you messed up here. You did this. What 8.5? What do I got? Oh, you pulled the dog's tail. You made fun of this little girl next door. I mean, what do they got, right? So instead of having a past life review, I had a presentation forward. I had a review of what I was going to experience, big chunks of main things in my life. I saw who I was going to marry. I saw my children. I saw where I was going to live. I saw myself fighting in a war in Asia. Had no idea where Vietnam was at. In fact, at that time, it was Indochina, French Indochina. But I saw myself on these helicopter things, looked like tadpoles. Hueys, I know now, but that funny look like a tadpole, long stretched out. They weren't even invented then. We're talking about 1954 or something. So they might have been on a drawing board someplace, but they weren't out there. And I saw myself sitting behind a machine gun. I saw things happen in combat, which when we get to talk about Vietnam, you can see how that relates, and it makes a big difference on your courage on the battlefield when you know what's going to happen. That's not courage. That's just following the script. I might as well been an actor. It's just like, oh, okay, I know what's going to happen. Anyway, so I saw that. I saw illnesses. I saw events. I saw all these stuff. I saw President Kennedy getting shot. I didn't know who Kennedy was, but I knew it was intuitively. I knew that was a president. It's in a motorcade. I knew it was Texas. And for some reason, I knew it was Dallas. Now, when it did happen, and I told people ahead of time, like school principal and people, a couple of weeks before it happened, yeah, sure, Bill, sure. And then when it happened, people got spooked, of course. I think if today a young kid goes and tells a school teacher that somebody's going to shoot the president, they'd have Homeland Security at this kid's house, right?
Probably.
None of that back then. It was like, yeah, okay, Crazy Bill says it happens. Well, Crazy Bill is right? Anyway, but in my vision, and it didn't feel like a vision, it felt like I was actually watching it. More than one person was involved in assassination. So government tells me that is wrong. So what do I know? They've investigated, so I just let it go at that. I don't want to be a conspiracy buff of any kind. But truth of the matter was there's more than one person. So I saw that happen. I saw all this stuff play out. And then I also had this forewarning. There was two numbers, 5, 9, and then when the 5 flipped over, if you take a 5 and you flip it over, it kind of looks like a 2. So it kind of looked like a 29, 59, 29. They kept flowing through the air. And I didn't understand that at the time. Somebody tried to say, oh, that's astrology. And it's like at 29 and 59, that's when your Saturn, you pass through Saturn or something, different phase. And when you reach 29 year of your life and the 59th year of your life, it's like a transition period. It's almost like a spiritual death type, things change. And okay, great. All right. But I looked at it and thought, well, maybe that's a health warning. Maybe if I don't take care of myself at 29, maybe I'm looking at death. And maybe at 59, I'm looking at death again. So that's how I took that. So this near-death experience happened that night, that evening. It could have been all night. It could have been 20 minutes. Could have been 1 minute. Could have been have no clue. When you're in that kind of encapsulated living experience of consciousness, there's no time, there's no reference. It's just, it happens, and there it is, and you know it. So that began my 1-year journey in the hospital. And it was filled with a lot of trials, a lot of lessons and everything. But I could have came away from that whole experience bitter, but I didn't. I had all the time, wasn't allowed to get out of bed, wasn't allowed to do anything. We're talking, I was there for Thanksgiving, I was there for Christmas, I was there for New Year's, I was there for my birthday, Easter, everything, right? No celebrations, nothing special. Boom. And they'd wake you up at 6 o'clock in the morning when the shift changed, so they could give you your shots and bathe you. And then they'd turn the lights off at 9. And there was nothing scheduled in between except getting shots, tests, x-rays, and just laying there. Nothing. Wow. So I could have just vegetated. You could go crazy like. I didn't. Since I kind of knew a little bit about meditation, I started practicing certain techniques. In fact, I was making things up. I thought I was making things up, these techniques. And in fact, I was visualizing air coming into my navel, like I was breathing through my belly button and bringing it up through my spine and stuff, and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And neat things were happening, but I didn't learn these things at that time. But I was exposed over about 50 years later, actually 50 years later. I met a Tibetan monk who didn't speak English, and I spent 3 days with him. And I learned more from him in 3 days of silence than I learned from anybody else. That was in India. That's another whole story. But I found out, first thing he taught me was that technique that I thought I made up. I go, oh, it's real, right? Anyway, so there I was. I come out of the hospital, came home, and I decided that since I remember the 2959, I thought intuitively, I don't know why, but I just said, I think I need to take care of my body. I need to watch what I eat, what I drink, what I take. So I'm not doing drugs. I'm not doing alcohol, not doing cigarettes, no dope. I'm not going to do red meat and beef and pork and all that kind of heavy stuff. So I was back then, oh, you're vegetarian. Well, I wasn't really a vegetarian because once or twice a week I'd have a little fish or piece of chicken once in a while or turkey on holidays. So I wouldn't call that vegetarian, but it was pretty close. And I went a lot of years on that. And then I became a pure vegetarian later on, but I was only one in the family. And if in the 1950s, if you went to a restaurant or a fast food place or anywhere, there's no alternative. Can I have tofu? Do you have, no, there was nothing. It was like, you have a hamburger at the place or you don't have a hamburger. That's it, right? The French fries are cooked in, beef, stuff and everything.
Well, now they got everything, Impossible beef and all that.
Yeah. There was no alternatives back then, but so I tried to. That's why I had a little chicken and a little fish once in a while because it was like I had no other choices, especially when I went in the Army. So my first week home, I'm sitting in the fun room, and I hear this sound of a choir of angels singing. I mean, it sounded like angels. It was just beautiful feminine voices. Closest sound I could think was when I was in Utah, I was listening to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. I think that's how you say that. Anyway, when I got these voices, it was kind of like that choir singing, except it was softer and more feminine. And my wife, poor Joan slipped there. My mother and I were listening, and she heard it too. And I go, is it on a radio? Is it on television or whatever? So we looked around, we turned everything off. There was no records playing. There was apparently no neighbors playing anything. We went outside, we walked a block away each direction. Sound never changed. It was still the same volume. So finally we came back in the house and it went on for about an hour. And she goes, my mother finally says, no, it's got to be a choir of angels, right? I mean, there's no source. It's just coming out of the ether. The next day, I believe it was the next day, one of my dogs got run over by a car. Car was going about 40 miles an hour in front of our house. Heard this sound splat. And I heard screeching brakes and I run out there and the dog is just, laying on the asphalt, kind of flat on one side, blood trickling out of his corner of his mouth, blood trickling out of his nose, blood trickling from the corners of its eyes, its ears. I mean, there's some head damage. There's some damage. And it's just laid there and with tongues hanging out, going. I mean, it was just like, and the poor guy that hit him was hysterical. Like the guy really felt bad for hitting the dog, but the dog ran out in front of him, so I wasn't mad at him. But it was like, so I picked up the dog and I came in, and this is where I tried out my first healing technique, which we will talk about if you wish later. And I remember from taking and looking at and reading my mother's lessons that she got from the Self-Realization Fellowship, they had practiced something called recharging exercises. Yogananda taught how you can recharge your body with energy, doing what looked like Western exercises. It wasn't this wild, crazy yoga stuff. It was dynamic tension, and visualizing energy, and really basic for Westerners. But I remember at the time getting that, thinking, why is he emphasizing doing these before you meditate? It can't just be relaxing your body to get you ready for meditation. It has to be something deeper. You're recharging, you're bringing energy into your body. Where's that energy going? What are you using it for? So that thought was in my mind while I was laying in the hospital for a year, because I thought about that, because I was tensing and doing this stuff in bed. And it was helping me get well. It was like, oh, I'm bringing the energy in. Let's heal me, right? So I got the dog, I have it in my lap. It looks god awful. And I put my hands around it and had such great love. There's the other key, energy plus love. I put my hands on this dog and I just tensed up, visualized this energy coming through the top of my head. I wasn't, one of these prodigies always coming through my, through the crown chakra down the, I had no clue what all that stuff was. It's coming through the top of my head. That's all, it's coming through my top of my head. It's coming out my hands. And I'm going to love this dog to health, right? And I put it on there. And it was like static electricity coming out the tips of my finger. It was like, and it was the same as if a fire department had come and had done this here, for your heart, right? Defibrillation, right? Mm-hmm. It was just like that, because as soon as I had my hands on this dog's body, it just jumped up, boom, ran around the house and lived for, many, many years later. Nothing wrong. Bleeding stopped. Everything was good. Cleaned up. It was all good. But I kind of put that aside and I said, I remember that one. Love plus energy heals. It heals. But it takes a firm belief. It takes a lot of love. And it takes real power. So that was like one of the first major changes that I saw, because coming out of the hospital, I went from this silly boy to, I was always silly. I'm still a silly guy. I haven't changed. I'm still a kid. But I could see a more philosophical, spiritual part of my life opening up. It was like, yeah, I could dance like a clown, but I can also dance like a god. There's the worlds are not separate. You could be funny and serious and loving and silly. It didn't make no difference. It's all God, right? And so that's kind of began my journey. And then, of course, I went to high school and I told the principal about the assassination. I used to tell people all kinds of stuff. I knew things were going to happen in the future. And I didn't do the booze, didn't do the drugs, didn't do the hard meat. I didn't do any of that stuff. I took care of myself. And what's interesting is I had a friend that I met in grade school. He and I were born in San Francisco at St. Mary's Health Hospital, same day, about an hour apart, both Irish. Our mothers were in the same room together. We were in the same bassinets next to each other. Well, Brian and McDonald, right? Two Irishmen. So he was junior, I was a junior. So it was like everything was just lined up to stars. We didn't know each other because my mother left the hospital, didn't really know that lady. And anyway, that was like in 1946. Well, in 1954, we end up in a school 40 something miles away from that hospital in Sunnyvale, not San Francisco. And we had a birthday celebrated on the same day. And we started asking questions and found out that, we were crib mates, right? So I always kind of kept track of that, thinking, well, if there's anything to do with astrology, right? This guy's the closest guy I know, born in the same place, an hour apart. Whatever happens to me is probably going to be parallel, pretty close, right? If there is such a thing as being able to read the star charts. So I held that thought. I took care of myself, and I went off to war. When I got drafted, there's an interesting story. I first knew I was going to go in the service. I didn't mind serving. I wasn't anti-war. I wasn't anti-anything. But I knew I was supposed to be there. I had these visions of it. So I was kind of concerned when I went down to join the Marines 4F, Navy 4F, Air Force 4F, Coast Guard. They didn't even want to talk to me. They had too many people. Army 4F. So I go down and I join the Merchant Marine. And I'm going to sail on a ship. And they go, yeah, you're good enough for us. So I got orders. I'm going to ship to Vietnam with the Merchant Marine in 1965, October. And they go, well, before you can ship with us, you got to go to your draft board, selective service office. Your friends and neighbors want you, right? So I go to the draft board. I say, I need permission from you to go on this thing, because I'm 19 years old. And they said, well, we need to classify you. I said, okay, report here at 4:30 tomorrow, get on a bus, San Jose, you got to get a bus, 4:30 tomorrow, we're going to go to Oakland Army Base. I said, okay. Same place that I failed the physical 4 times within 2 weeks, same doctors. I go in there, I give them the same medical history, and they go, what are you trying to pull, kid? Trying to get out of this? Hell no. Put your hands up. I do that. They count the fingers. You got 10 fingers. You're good. Go. You're 1A. I go, really? I said, you guys failed me here. Get out of here, kid. You're causing trouble. Anyway, so I went from trying to join and they failed me to getting drafted, and whatever I told them, they thought I was trying to cheat to get out. So I said, okay, great. So I joined an extra year because this nice, kind, honest sergeant with a coffee cup in his hands goes, hey, kid, these guys are all going into the infantry and you're not going to learn anything. He says, you want to learn something good? Become a mechanic, be on a helicopter, sign up for an extra year. As it turns out, 300 guys got drafted, 300 guys went to helicopter school. They needed helicopter guys. Well, what's the same as I did? He said, I had 1 more year than they did. So it was like, what? Anyway, I didn't get a condo either. So never listen to promises of recruiters.
Yep.
So I go and I'm in the military. I know I'm going to Vietnam. I get orders. I'm going over. And when I get there, it was like deja vu. I mean, I've already been there at 8.5 years old. I was already there. It's like, even though I know there's going to be hardships, I know there's going to be blood, I know people are going to be shooting at me, I know it's going to be crazy. But the fact that I saw myself there and I saw myself not there later, I knew, I mean, heck, they're not going to kill me. It was, maybe they blow something off, but I wasn't worried about it. So anyway, so I got this whole, people go, I get introduced, by the state doing things and other people, and they go, oh, our hero, this guy got all these medals. He's got a Distinguished Flying Cross, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, all this stuff, 14 air medals. And I'm going, no, it's not bravery when you know what's going to happen. There's nothing brave about that. That's just showing up. It's an act. Yeah, okay, here's a script. All right, I get shot down. Okay, I get blown up. Okay, great. Let's do it. But it was that kind of situation. But I knew who was going to get killed, who was going to get wounded, what helicopters were going to crash, what was going to happen. Now, you would think that'd be good, but it's really kind of a terrible thing to have, because first off, when you try to warn other people, people think you're crazy. And then when it happens, people are afraid of you. You can't win. It's like, and they ain't going to listen to you. It's like I say, hey, don't get on the helicopter. It's going to crash. Everybody's going to get killed. No, they get on the helicopter, crashes, and everybody gets killed. Well, you didn't do anything except spook everybody out, right? So that was really, really hard on me. But I had some unique things happen. And I don't know any explanation for them. I got contacted about 10 years ago by a contractor working for somebody in Langley, Virginia. That's how they introduce themselves. And I look at the phone and says, Langley, Virginia. I said, the only thing I know in Langley, Virginia is the CIA. The guy goes, well, we're guys. I said, okay. He says, we got your file here. I go, what file? He says, we got the file here from the agency on all these things that you did in Vietnam. I go, what things? He says, well, I can't tell you, that's classified. Well, who's the file on me? Well, tell me what it says about me. I can't do that. It's classified. I go, what? He says, but they had a file on me from every time I made a prediction about a helicopter crashing or something unusual happened, and they'd investigate it and make fun of me and think I was doing something weird and threaten me. But they took it seriously, and they actually kept the file on it. And it turns out they had a file on a bunch of other people similar to myself that were having psychic experiences in Vietnam. I don't know if you know anything about that. At the time, they hadn't developed, Stanford University had that Stanford Institute of Research, where what was it, the gatekeepers or the gate, whatever they were.
Yeah, Project Gateway and then Stargate.
Yeah, Project Gateway.
With the remote viewing.
Oh, that was after I got out of the military, but they were observing and looking for people for that kind of program. And this guy, I was on the phone with him for about an hour, and because he asked me a specific question, and I'm going to tell you the story he was asking about in particular, but apparently they're never going to admit it, but apparently even now there is a program which it's not the official name, but they call it the Jedi program, where you have a group of about 100, I was guessing about 100 of these special psychic warriors that are being used in small little groups, smaller than an A team, like 4 or 5, just little small little groups. And they were using them for stuff, whatever that stuff was, in Africa and other places. So that's the best the guy could give me without telling me nothing. So basically, we wanted to know about the story, and I'm going to tell you the story. And he wanted to know how they could duplicate it because he had research funds of $28 million. And he was trying to duplicate what I did electronically through, the mastery of using money and technology, right? I'm going, I don't think so. But anyway, the story was this. I was on a special mission. It was a command and control helicopter. And in it, we had the troops, the ground commanders for these troops on the ground. It was South Vietnamese Army Rangers. And we had their commanders in our helicopter. There was an insertion, and they inserted about 150 of these guys or 200 of these South Vietnamese Rangers down there. And they ran into a large force of uniformed North Vietnamese that just come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So it was like the real deal enemy wasn't the Viet Cong. It was actually, mostly NVA, and there was some, I'm assuming, some VC as well. But there was 500 of them against 150. So it was like a big battle going on. They needed reinforcements and help. And so all these helicopters come in, and they had gunships and everything. And there was 9 helicopters, and they all got shot up and got bullet holes, and they all left. And there was just one left. That was us. And we were up in the sky, circling around, watching this battle, because these guys were the commanders. They were giving orders. And they said, we got to get down on the ground. So, meaning we were going to be a single, solo, all alone, no protection helicopter going down with 500 guys. We're the only target. And all of a sudden, we got 500 people firing guns, machine guns, automatic weapons, anything you think, throwing rocks, whatever they could do, right? All this stuff is coming at us, and you could hear the sounds. Pop, 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 pop. It's like somebody with a 22 shooting a metal, aluminum can, beer can or something. Had that sound. Pop, 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 pop. You could feel it. The whole place was shaking. And we had orders, since there was a mix of friendlies and good guys and bad guys on the ground, that weren't allowed to shoot our machine guns. So we're going down. I got a machine gun, and all these guys are shooting me, and I'm just, hey, King's X, come on, So there we go, and it's just like a shower of light coming at us, red flares, tracers, green tracers, white tracers. I think the green tracers were Eastern Europe or something, or Chinese. I'm not sure where they came from, but there was like 2 or 3 different colors of tracers coming up. And so we're going minimal speed. We flare, we set down, and we probably got, I don't know, dozens and dozens of holes in the helicopter by now. And then the guys that we transported get off, and I'm looking around, making sure they're clear. And the one guy, he was an officer, and he turned out to be a double agent. Means he was pretending to be a South Vietnamese soldier, but his allegiance were to the other guys, apparently, because as soon as he got off the helicopter and his buddies were facing a different direction, he turns around, and I look at him, and he looks at me, and he aims an AK-47 or whatever it was. He's got 18 rounds in the clip, and he opens up all 18 rounds. I turn around like that, and all I see is a flash of light, just like a lightsaber coming at you, like, And one round hits right square in my heart. knocks me back against the wall of the helicopter. Now, 3 days before, it's the third day I had this chest protector, I was wearing an experimental vest made out of ceramics, and nobody wanted it because it was heavy. It was 20 pounds. And, there was a front plate and a back plate. And me and my gunner took the back plate, we stuck it under our canvas seat because rounds coming up, we wanted to protect all of us.
Right.
Good stuff coming up. Okay, that's not too good, right? So we put it under there. So anyway, so I get this round, hits right square in the heart on this chest protector, blows a big hole out, size of a golf ball. It's like boom, and I get pieces of stuff flying, and there's fire flashing out of there and smoke pouring out. So it was a tracer round, obviously, but it was just. It's like I got kicked with a mule, knocked me back so hard that I was wearing a flight helmet with a mic cord plugged in where I could listen to. I confess, I was actually listening to Armed Forces radio music. I was listening to the Rolling Stones singing, "I can't get no satisfaction for real. I can't get no." And boom, it was like, wow, this is surreal. And then the sound stopped because the cord, broke. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the smoke coming out. It's on the heart. I'm going, I got to be dead. I don't hear anything. I'm thinking I'm dead, right? Anyway, so the rest of the rounds, unbeknownst to me, somehow penetrated me, the helicopter wall behind me, the transmission housing behind me, and exited the other side. I'm sitting this way. The other guy's sitting this way, facing opposite directions. These rounds went right through and hit him in the back, in the butt, in the neck, all the backside of him, exact shadow of me. But on my side, not one entry hole, not one, no point of entry. Plus, you had to go through all that metal, and it comes out the other side. It was like they came, one hits me symbolically in the heart, the rest, 17 rounds, disappear. He gets hit 17 times on the other side. We crash. Well, we made an unscheduled landing, is what the official term is. We made an unscheduled stop. Oh, yeah, okay. We're in Detroit. No, we're in the middle of freaking jungle there. Anyway, so I get out, and there's smoke starting to come out of the helicopter. There's fuel pouring, jet fuel's pouring. Hydraulic fluid is pouring. Everything is pouring. And so I run up. My job is to get the pilot out of the aircraft, because they got this. You open the doors up, they got these big metal plates on each side of them. You have to slide it back. They have a hard time getting out. And they got metal plates behind them. They sit in a fully reinforced metal armored chair. I don't think people realize helicopter pilots were like in this cocoon of protection, even though almost 4,500 of them got killed. But they were protected, right? And they had a ballistic helmet, and some guys had some padding on their knees and stuff. So he comes out, he's okay, but I get him out, and I grab the fire extinguisher, and and then I realize that nobody's getting the pilot out the other side. So I run around the other side and I get him out. And then I turn around back and I see the door gunner on the other side, and he's slumped over the M60 machine gun, and there's just a waterfall of blood coming off his canvas seat and off the floor, and his uniform is all red. And he's just laying there. He's alive, but he's got 17 holes. I look at the holes in the wall. I go, holy cow, how'd that happen, right? Even I'm going, how'd that happen, right? So we're sitting there. We don't want to sit long because there's 500 guys coming after us. So I throw this guy about 150 pounds on my shoulder. I don't know if he ever ran, because I'm a little guy. I'm only 5'6", 5'7". I'm running with a guy about 5'10", 150 pounds on my back at a full gallop. That can really mess up your back. I'm just telling you right now, because your adrenaline's kicking. You want to get the safety, right? Oh, and I'm running with this guy over across my shoulders, right? So we get far enough ahead, and then all of a sudden they sent back one helicopter for us. It was a B model, Bravo model, meaning it was a gunship. 2 door gunners, 2 pilots, and a lot of ammo. They had no room for any more weight. but they took the badly wounded gunner and they took the pilot from my aircraft because he was aircraft commander. He was a major, old rank. Well, I had a wound in the hand. I was bleeding. Didn't make any difference. And they left me and this co-pilot, and they go, got no room. This guy's coming after us, right? You got no room. Throw something out. We'll be back. It was like, I remember that movie, Romancing the Stone, when I don't know if you ever saw Romancing the Stone, when these guys leave and they go, we'll be back. And we'll be back.
Right.
So me and the pilot, we go back to the helicopter because we're in trouble here. So I take off one of the machine guns. I dismount it from the Huey, and I take 1,500, 2,000 rounds, whatever I had them all hooked together. In my spare time, I used to take ammo. Ammo belt comes every 5th round is a tracer. I don't know if you know that, but when a guy goes a tracer, it's every 5th round. Tracer comes out, so not only you can see where it's going, but that's 5 rounds. And if you're on the ground with a machine gun, you let up. Well, I watched John Wayne movies and he never let up. He gets down there and just goes da 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 da. So I figured I could do that. I didn't realize these things overheat because I'm in a helicopter and I got a blade going, right? Going 100 miles an hour. I got a blade, blowing fresh air on it, and nothing ever overheated, So anyway, I got the thing. I put this ammo on it, and this is a belt that I made that was solid tracers. Every time I was having lunch or free time, I had this for show. It was like, if I really get in trouble, I'm going to fire solid tracers because they're going to look like I'm firing a lot more than I got because they're expecting to be 5th round. This thing comes out like it's a steady light. They're going to think I have like a minigun or some kind, right?
Yeah.
So this is my show belt, right? I throw that in there. Of course, knowing now that's going to burn damn hot. Right? It's going to be hotter because every round has got this spark, right? It's all going to come out hot. So I go out in the jungle and I just told this guy, you cover my back with this 45. And I got this belt and I'm carrying a machine gun down here at my hip, right? That's the way I seen John Wayne do it, right? I don't know if you ever held an M60 machine gun, but they're not lightweight. They're not lightweight, right? So I got it on there and I just start going. I go, yeah, okay. I figured, you know what? They're not going to get close to me and I ain't giving up, right? And all of a sudden, I hear this sound, click. And I look down at the barrel, and the barrel is white, not red hot, white hot. And it's drooping. I don't know if you've ever seen a barrel of a gun, how solid that is. All of a sudden, the barrel's like that. Holy Toledo, right? So then it's like, I just shot all these guys, right? They got to be mad at me now, right? So they go, so then I'm thinking, in the Army's smart. They teach you some basic words, but they never teach you the Vietnamese word for I surrender, I'm sorry, I give up. And they don't give you a white, you don't have a white t-shirt, you got a green t-shirt, you don't have white underwear, you got green underwear, you got green socks. You can't even wave a white flag. You can't give up. It's like, well, Kimosabe, apparently that was Kimosabe. So there was no Lone Rangers over there. So that was it. So we were stuck. I had no choice, but we fought the rest of the day. It was about 8 hours before we would come back. I got put in for a Silver Star that day and all kinds of stuff happened. But when we got back and they sent a big, large aircraft out to lift it out, kind of like AAA coming out to get the old helicopter, right? They sent out a Chinook or something and they picked up this Huey, bring it back. And everybody came out to see it because everybody was trying to figure out how you can have 18 rounds come here, 17 of them come out the other side with no entry holes. And they sent out people from headquarters, the CID, which is like the NCIS of the Army. And the CIA came out on that and investigated and interviewed me. And that's why this guy was calling, because he wanted to know, how did I bend the bullets? What? I go, no, man. I mean, this is meditation. This is metaphysical. I said, if you want to spend a few lifetimes meditating, maybe you can learn how to do this, but you ain't going to do it with money. Anyway, so that was one of the many stories in Vietnam, but I knew I would tell guys, don't get on that aircraft. And of course, they'd resist and they would go and they would not come back. Or I tell this guy, don't go because something's going to happen to you. They come back wounded or whatever. So that was my experience in Vietnam. But I always knew somebody was watching over me. That's usually one of the questions you ask your people is that you had a near death, is somebody looking after you? Do we have guardian angels? And I'm going to say, yes, but not just to people that have near death experience. Everybody's got somebody looking after you. It's a matter of you being able to listen. Everybody has that quiet voice. Some people never listen. And if you're doing alcohol and drugs and heavy meat and anger and depression and all these mental disorders, you hear the less and less and less of the voice. You don't hear it anymore. It becomes very quiet, non-existent. But potentially, everybody has that voice. It's your higher self. And you are additionally having, call them guardian angels, call them guides, call them counselors, literally life counselors, but people are trying to, that's a bad word, entities, energy beings, angels, other consciousness, the universe, whatever it is, everything is trying to direct you to a more loving, enlightened journey. And so Vietnam, as bad and awful as it was, and sometimes you just want to talk about Vietnam, that's a whole show or two by itself. I just kind of gave you a sample of an event. But so that experience, when I came back from Nam, I then went in to start helping veterans. When I came back from Vietnam, there was no welcome home committee. No welcome wagon. Nobody's saying,
it's probably the opposite.
Thanks a lot, guys. We really, no, it was like you bunch of baby killers, all that.
Yeah.
It was bad. So I started helping veterans back in 1970. I started helping veterans. There was no word for PTSD. Back we were just a bunch of crazy vets. So I've been helping vets since 1970. And then I started helping the Vietnamese refugees coming over to boat people. I helped them in San Jose get resettled. A lot of it out of my own pocket, my own organization. And I started working with the children and with the adults. And anyway, but back in my mind all this time, when I was in that hospital, going back to that near-death experience, when I was going back to that hospital, I was thinking about the book Autobiography of a Yogi. In that book by Paramahansa Yogananda, written and published in 1946, year of my birth, actually. And trust me, no 8, 9-year-old kids are reading that book. I read parts of it and parts of it read to me. There was a chapter about this great avatar that Yogananda introduced to the world called Babaji. And Babaji is this great, some people say mythical person. No, I beg to differ. That this great avatar, this sage, sage from the past, who is apparently not dying, no records of his life, being born or whatever. Some people say he started at the beginning of this age, creation, and he'll be here till the end. Who knows? It's not important. But I was fascinated by this guy because he came back in the 1800s to India to meet a guru named Larry Masha and reintroduce the teachings of Kriya Yoga, which was lost for many, many years. It's an ancient form of meditation, which now you hear the term Kundalini energy and, Kriya, and all that stuff it's almost in the normal nomenclature of conversation in the spiritual world. Back then it wasn't, and nobody heard of Babaji. But apparently he came to this cave, he summoned this guru, the guru came there, was reawakened, and he reintroduced this technique and was authorized to go out and spread it to the world so others could learn it. So it happened in this cave in India. And I was fascinated with that because when I was in the hospital, I wanted to get out of the hospital and go to India, find that cave. Nobody was publicizing where it was at or anything. Find that cave and experience the energy of the place. I got to do that. Before I die, I got to do this. All right. So finally, 50 years, almost exactly 50 years to the day of having my near-death experience, I find myself taking my first trip to India. 58 years and many months. About 4 or 5 months shy of making, 59. And so you remember that thing about 59, 29, I'm going.
Right.
Because 29 was kind of a weird time for me. It was like something changed. But it was like, I got to go. I got to go see Babaji's cave before I turn 59 because maybe I won't get a chance, right? So I've still got that thought in the back of my mind. So I'm traveling with a friend and we travel all over India. We finally get a lowdown on this ashram in the Himalayan mountains where they caretake for the cave. They actually had the cave and you had to get approval to go to it and everything. So this is where my second near-death experience transpires. And it's kind of not a normal experience. Again, I've had 3 near-death experiences, and this one is different than the first, totally different than the third. None of them are the same. When I get to this place, I could try to convince this Swami that I want to go there. He tells me there's nobody around that can take me there. You can't find the place on your own. And I said, no. I said, I've waited almost 59 years to get here. I ain't leaving until I go see that cave. So he says, okay, here's some crazy directions. If you can find it, I give you the keys to the cave and the temple and everything because they lock everything up now. Then you go. So he said, you go down the instructions where you go down the road, you go into town here and you make the first or second, maybe it's the third left, but take one of them. And then you go down this road and then you go down about 12, maybe 15, could be 18 miles, or it could be 10. That's the instructions, just like that, right? And then you're going to take a turn, not on the right, but on the left. And then he goes, I don't think it's on the right. It is on the left. Yeah, maybe. Take the left, go down. You'll see a bunch of dirt roads. Take one that looks good. Go down it till you can't go any farther. Then start walking. Then you'll see a sign that says, there it is. It says, can you find it? My driver's going. Indian driver's going. No. I said, yeah, we'll find it. He says, okay, you got to, I got one requirement. You got to be back by 5:30 because I'm going to lock the gates up. I want the keys back. I'm going to lock the gates up. And anything you got inside here, you got to go get a hotel because we're locking it up. Can't stay at the ashram. So, okay. So we drive down the road and we're going down there and I tell the driver, turn here. He goes, why? I go, Dad, try this one. Dad, try that one. No, do that one. So we finally get to a place and he pulls over and he thinks I'm crazy, the driver, which is probably true anyway. But so we get out and we start walking without him. And then we finally find the sign, except it's not in the ground. Somebody had pulled it up and threw it up onto a canyon wall. So we had no idea. There's about 10 trails there, cow trails, people trails. It's one of those 10. So we take a guess. We figure it's got to be uphill. It's the top of the hill someplace. So we start walking. Of course, we get lost. I was sick at the time. I was dealing with dysentery. And so I was having some real issues and I was weak. And we went early in the morning and we didn't have water. We didn't take matches or a flashlight. We didn't take a jacket, didn't take a sweater. I had a hat on, kind of like this, and sandals, and that was it, and t-shirt. So we hiked. We should have been there in an hour and a half or so. It was like 4 hours. We're still hiking. But I'm having a heart attack. It's going, boom, boom. I mean, you can actually see the movement on your shirt. It's really pounding. It's really working, right? And I thought I was in trouble because I was really sweating like crazy. And then all of a sudden I'm not sweating at all. So I think, I must be good. I'm not sweating anymore. Yeah. Who knew about dehydration, right? So,
Right.
So we finally get to the top and we see the place. We go in there, we open up the temple. There's a big portrait of Babaji there. And I'm just feeling terrible. We rest. We finally go the last 100 yards, get to the cave. We open up the gate. We go inside. And I meditate in the cave. And then I pull out this list. I had a list in my pocket. I made up a list before I left for India, thinking this was going to be probably my only chance to go to India. And I typed with number 10 Aditya, I mean, the smallest I could get. And I typed the name of everybody I ever knew in my life, high school friends, military friends, old bosses, family, enemies, neighbors, people I liked, people didn't like. I put them all down. I said, I'm taking this list of souls. It was 4 pages, both sides, single space. And some people I didn't remember their names. I just said old neighbor, hitchhiker I picked up 1990. I mean, God knows who they are. I don't have to know who they are, right? I had pictured in my mind. Mm-hmm. So I got there and I mentally read all these names and glanced at them and asked, God to bless them all and Babaji to bless them all. I was having this beautiful experience in there. Just as a side note, I'll come back. Side note, eventually I took that list to the Ganges River, Varanasi, I think it was, and went out at sunrise in a boat, took that list with me. And as the sun was coming up over the Ganges River, I took the list out, read it mentally, set it on fire, and then dropped the last of the ashes into the Ganges. And that's how I disposed of this prayer list for all those people. So all those people, they may have not traveled to India or gone to Babaji's cave, but I mentally, spiritually, and energetically took them with me on the journey. So they got something out of it, at least at some level. So anyway, back to the cave. So I'm in the cave and I'm feeling really terrible. I'm dizzy, I'm lightheaded. And we decided to go because we had to get back by 5:30. We wasted most of the day. And I'm leading this guy, my buddy, back. I don't know where I'm going. I'm out of it. I'm dizzy. I'm wandering. We killed another 2 hours going backwards. We're up higher in the mountains. These Himalayan mountains are casting this big, huge shadow. And even in the afternoon, in a shadow in the Himalayas, the temperature drops down really cold. I mean, it's really, really cold. So I'm chilled and everything. Pretty soon we're standing on this 30-foot cliff. And I'm looking down and my heart is going, boom. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh. And I pass out, right? Whoosh. I go down a 30-foot cliff head first, flip over on my back. The good news is the cliff wasn't a straight drop. It kind of went down and then a little edge and then a little slope. So it was kind of like ping, 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 like a ping pong ball going down.
Jeez.
So I'm laying on this boulder at the bottom, about the size of a Volkswagen Bug. And I'm looking up at the sky. I'm not breathing. My heart's not beating. I don't feel nothing. I don't feel any pain from the fall. I'm looking at my body's just kind of like twisted up down there and scratched and dirty. And I'm going, wait a minute. I remember this feeling from when I was a young kid. 50 years ago, right? Same feeling. I'm going, oh my gosh, maybe this is my time I'm going. So next thing I know, I'm kind of floating up. I'm weightless. I'm looking at my buddy on the cliff and I'm looking at him at eye level and he's 30 feet up above the body. And I go, wait a minute. I look down, my body's not. I go, oh, okay, I've been here, done that before. That's not me. No, I'm the consciousness. I'm the spirit, right? And I'm just enjoying that, thinking, well, if you're going to go, it's okay. I finally got to Babaji's cave. I experienced the bliss of it, got to India. And if I die now, it's okay. And so I'm looking down at my body, that funky little body laying down there with sandals on, and my hat, and I look over and there's this huge head of a cobra snake coming. And it goes right over my ankles, my calves, and it's slithering. And I get so excited about this. First off, I say huge. When I first told the story, my wife she stopped me in front of all these people. She goes, first time you told the story, this was a 6-7 foot snake. And now you're telling us a king cobra. I go, well, and all the excitement, it just got bigger, right? It just kept growing, I never really knew how big it was because it was coming out of the grass, going over my feet, going into the grass. I never saw its head and tail. At the same time, it just kept slithering and slithering and slithering. And trust me, if you have a large cobra snake crossing your ankles and your feet, it's huge to you. Nobody's going to tell you it's small, right?
Right.
So there I go. And I get excited. And it's because, hang on a second, there we go. It's because, can't even get my head on straight. It's because there's such love. I felt such affinity, such love for that snake that I just wanted to reach out and grab it. And so I'm having this love affair with the snake. And while I'm doing that, all of a sudden, it's like, clear, choke. It's like my body got defibrillated from the love of that snake. It totally woke my body up. My body jumped up off the rock. I was back in my body, like feeling like I'm about 400, 500 pounds. And I jump up and the snake is still going across my feet. And I'm reaching down, I'm trying to grab the snake and I'm grabbing it in its body someplace. My hands are like this. Notice that they're not touching. They're like this. I'm trying to touch my fingers together. I can't get my fingers to touch around the body of the snake. And the head, the thin part's already gone past. I'm in the middle someplace, but it's like this. So I don't know how big that is, but that's a big middle part, right? And it just keeps slithering through my hands. And my friends yell at me like, you crazy idiot, what are you doing? You know, blah, blah, blah. And the snake just keeps getting away from me. So I'm chasing the snake with sandals on, no socks, just sandals on with my bare feet there. I'm chasing the snake through tall grass where I can't see it, right? I'm trying to grab it. And it finally slithers to this little trickle of a waterfall that was no higher than probably this sheetrock wall behind me, probably about 8, 9 feet. And it just kind of trickled down into a little pond, little tiny waterfall. The snake crawled up behind the waterfall, curled up, and then struck its head up, right? Like, you know, with its tongue hanging out, right? It was like, it just stared at me. I stopped at that point. I didn't reach into the water. I just respectfully go, okay. It's like, that's as far as it was going to go. There it is, made it stand. But it was such love for the snake. It was beautiful. And then I remember in the book, having read it a few times, that in the autobiography of a yogi, when Babaji granted this guru, Larry Masha, his desire, one of his old desires was to live in a palace. So Babaji constructed out of the astral world or something, this beautiful palace out in the middle of nowhere. And then afterwards, he got to spend the night in the palace. The morning was coming. He was told, go down to the waterfall in the river, you know, the lake or the creek, whatever it was, and wash up and then come back, right? And then the palace disappears. So I'm thinking, nobody ever knew where that was at. Here I was lost coming back from the thing, and I fall into this thing that's exactly like they describe it in the book, right? With the little waterfall. And then, of course, I find out later that the cobra is very symbolic in India. That represents the Kundalini energy, the energy that's in the spine, energy for meditation, energy is Kriya Yoga. It's a cobra, right? It's all that coiled up energy, right? I didn't know. So it might have been symbolic to a lot of people. To me, it was just a beautiful thing. So then my friend gets upset. She goes, we're going to find our way out of here. So we follow the water down, figure the water's going to go down someplace, right? There'll be civilization. We find a farmer's house. We pay the farmer's kids to help us find our vehicle. They take our money. They go, yeah, we know where you crazy Americans are parked. Yeah. And Valley must know where we're crazy guys walking around there. So they take us to our car. We get in there. We drive back. Just as the guy's locking the gate up, we pull up and he goes, did you find Babaji's cave? And I proceeded to tell him the story about falling off the cliff, having a heart attack. You know, I had rash from something like poison oak. I don't know what it is in India, but it's like a poison oak, poison ivy. I had that rash all over my body. I had bruises. I had cuts. My shirt was torn, and I was happier than hell. I mean, I was just like, wow, this is cool, right? And the guy listening to my story, and there was a woman listening, and she from Alaska, some woman. She was at the ashram leaving. She goes, you know what they say, mister? And I go, she kept interrupting with that. I said, finally, what did they say? She says, those that have the most arduous journey to Babaji's cave have the greatest blessings. And she says, and you, sir, nobody's had a harder time going to that cave than you. She left, right? And so the Swami just smiled, smiled and everything, right? So, all right. So here's where we put the 29 and the 59 to bed, because I kind of had that dangling as I'm talking about this two experiences. This happened like in November of 2004. Now, a normal person, not a guy, guys are different. A woman, if she had that happen, she would have immediately been in the ER. So she got back to civilization. She would have been checked out. She would have, went back home. They would have been, no, not a guy. I got to finish my journey. I got several more months to go here. And then I get home and I'm going, well, I'm feeling good enough. Even though I was still having heart pains and everything else. Mm-hmm. And what was odd was I went to India looking to find that sacred moment where you find the guru sitting on a mountaintop, right? You climb up the mountain and the guy's going, what can I do for you, right? And I go, I'm looking for you, right? No, it never happened. But when I came back home, I had a big tumor right where my spiritual eye's at. I go in and the doctor goes, you got a cancerous tumor right there between your eyes. So I had an operation, it took 9 stitches, and they took this tumor out. And my wife thought I was crazy because I thought that was really cool. I said, you go to India to find God, come back, and you have an operation that takes that cancer from your spiritual eye. I mean, how symbolic can you get, right? I mean, it was like, that's cool. Anyway, nobody else thought it was cool but me. Anyway, so that was December. And January comes, I had a couple of mini heart attacks, collapsed in my garage about 6 times. I finally go, well, maybe the divine is trying to tell me something. 5 or 6 times collapsing in your garage is not a good sign, right? Something's wrong. So I come in the house and tell my wife, I said, I'm not feeling too good. I'm just going to drive over to Kaiser Hospital in South Sacramento. I'm just going to get checked out. I don't tell her I'm having a heart attack, but I'm having a full-blown heart attack. I mean, it's just exploding. But I'm just like right now, very calm. I get in my pickup truck, 5-speed, of course, and go through the gears. And I get to the hospital. And of course, you drive to ER. There's never a parking spot in ER, never. So you got to go park in the main lot, and then you got to hike back about a quarter of a mile. That goes. So I finally get there, and I walk into where the ambulatory people come in, not the ambulances. And there's 18 people in line. I counted them. And I'm standing there, wait, and the heart's going boom, boom. It felt like there was a rusty knife. Somebody was just kind of twisting around in my chest. Finally, I get up there, and what's the first question they asked me? The first question they asked me, you would think, are you okay, sir? What's wrong? What brings you here? The first question they asked me, do you have insurance? First question. I go, yeah. I got oh, okay. And then they asked me what was wrong with me. They said, take this clipboard, go sit over there, fill it out, then get in that line, turn the clipboard in. I'm having a full-blown heart attack. So, okay, I get the clipboard, I'm filling this thing out. It asks on there, why you come in? I put down, I'm having a full-blown heart attack. I get in the other line, there's about 8 people. About 5 minutes to get up the front. The nurse, she looks at me, she takes the clipboard, she goes, you wrote down here you're having a heart attack, sir? I go, yeah, I'm having sounds like a full-blown heart attack right now. She says, I'll be the judge of that. She says, how'd you get here? So I drove my pickup. Where'd you park? I know where I parked. She says, and you stood in that line? Yeah, you stood in this line? Yeah, you have no heart attack. Nah. Anyway, so she says, sit down. She takes out her stethoscope and she goes, sir, you're having a heart attack. And the next thing you know, they got these, it was like, I felt like I was in Kmart. Remember Kmart had the blue light special? These lights are going off. Ching, 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 ching. Next thing you know, somebody come with a gurney. They put me on a gurney. They're strapping me down. They're rolling me in there. And I go, what? What's, well, sir, you're having a heart attack. I said, yeah, I know. That's why I came in. But I tell you guys, no, sir, you're really having a heart attack. I said, yes, I know. So I go into the bring this doctor into the ER, and he looks at me. And the first thing I do, after he tells me he wants to operate and do all this stuff, and I go, this is kind of a funky deal. I said, I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do meat at all. I exercise. I meditate and do yoga. I don't even do coffee. I don't do sugar. I don't do salt. And he looked at me and he looks at my chart and he says, well, to be honest with you, sir, he says, I would have thought you'd probably been dead by 29 looking at your stuff here. Instead, you're going to make it to 59 next week. I thought 29, 59. So he's basically telling me that had I not led a clean life, I probably would have been dead at 29. And what made it a little more eerie was when I went in there, I was contacted by my reunion committee because they asked me about the next reunion who I wanted to see. And I said, I wanted to see Paul O'Brien, my buddy, because I was curious how he was doing, right? He drank, he smoked, he ate meat, he gambled, he did everything you could think of. He was a wild, crazy guy, He died. He's died. He didn't make 59. Nope. So I was a little concerned. So, because now they can operate on me, right? So anyway, so that was the 29-59 connection. And that was my first two near-death experiences and how it all kind of came together. But there's a lot of stories in between there. It wasn't just one of those simple lives. But each one of my near-death experiences altered and changed me. But I was altered and changed even greater by an out-of-body experience that I call a rainbow body experience. Now, my rainbow body experience, and I didn't even know that term even existed. I didn't know what that meant. For those that have done a little research on rainbow body experiences, usually it's in relation to a Dalai Lama type guy in Tibet or something, one of those lamas. They die, and then as their body's collapsing, there's this rainbow light shoots out of their body, and that's them. They leave in a rainbow body. But there's also rainbow bodies that I discovered that you could leave consciously. And there's rainbow body on the other side, which I didn't know about at the time. So all these things I didn't have any idea about. But I was really heavily into meditation, not medication, meditation. Make sure I got that word right. When I was very young and my children were not in school yet. And I used to meditate 2-3 hours before I went to bed and a couple hours in the morning before. So it was like 4 to 5 hours a day. We're serious. Wow. And I was still working. I was still commuting. I was still working overtime. I was even taking 18 units of college at night. I mean, talk about nothing. I mean, I was just all meditation and work. But this one night, I just had this real great meditation, really extra long. It was a beautiful experience. And I was just, when you finish a great meditation, it's like you're lightheaded is the wrong word, light-bodied, light-souled. You just feel like a feather. You just, it's like you're floating. I get into bed. On the side of my bed is a picture of Paramahansa Yogananda. And I'm staring at it. And I don't care which religious picture you look at, but if you're really into meditating on a photo or a painting or a statue, and you're looking at something that represents what you believe or love, if you stare at Jesus's picture, and it's not a picture, it's not a photo, it's people, oh yeah, I got a photo. No, you don't have a photo, you don't have a picture, you have a drawing. Anyway, if you look at Jesus long enough, the eyes follow you, the eyes come alive, the mouth, everything. And so if you stare at a religious artifact or a religious painting or picture with great intensity and great love, they come alive. It's like, I'm saying this like it happens to everybody, but I bet if people watching this try it, they'll find out that 15, 20 minutes of really focusing on some religious object or person, you can actually transport yourself and make it alive. So anyway, so I'm doing that. I'm just looking at it as I'm trying to get to sleep. And all of a sudden, bang, I'm totally out of my body. I mean, totally out of my body. My body went from weighing, 140, 50 pounds to zero or less than zero because it was like nothing. And I am traveling, and I use the quotes on that, traveling, because I told the story for like 20 something years, and I always thought it was traveling. Experience about 25, 30 years afterwards, I realized it wasn't travel at all. But all of a sudden I was moving it was like Star Trek when he goes into warp speed and all the lights come flashing by, right?
Mhm.
And everything was coming at me. 20, 30 years later, I realized that, well, I can't be traveling because it's also coming from the sides, from the bottom, from the back. It's coming every direction towards me, which means it's not travel, it's expansion. The consciousness is expanding and everything is becoming part of you.
Mm.
I didn't know that at the time. I was just enjoying the ride. Right? So there I was, and I realized at all kinds of levels, I mean, I just knew I was in this rainbow. It was a rainbow. When I say rainbow body, I mean a body like this is my body, but I have individual cells that have intelligence and consciousness and life. That's what they tell me. You know, all these little things are independent of me, but it all makes up me, right? So it's like I'm in this rainbow body and I'm making up the rainbow, right? I'm a part of that energy that's making that up, that I'm not alone. There's others like me that are part of this rainbow. And it's like a family. And I'm traveling in this family and I feel, smell, taste, touch, every sensation without using the eyes to see, without using the ears to hear. It was all, it didn't matter what happened. You felt it at that spiritual, cosmic, conscious level. It was there. And you could feel the sound of the universe. The universe makes a sound. And throughout history, mankind has tried to recreate that sound. You ever wonder why Christians go, "Oh man, what the heck does that mean?" Right? Or the Hindus, "Om," and all these different religions have something similar. They're all trying to create this sound. That sound is the sound of that Om. That's the creative sound. That's the sound that the electrons and the atoms, everything as they're spinning around, everything makes all stuff, all that energy that's moving stuff makes that sound. So the whole universe is filled with that sound. So therefore, in the Bible, where it says, "In the beginning was the Word was a sound. It was Om. It was Amen."
Mm.
So that's what I felt and believed when it was happening, because it was like a part of me. I was the Om. I was the colors. I was everything I saw. All these cosmic planets or whatever they were, all these gases, all these things. It was just overwhelmingly. It was just, there was nothing that I could see, touch, taste, nothing. There was nothing outside of me that wasn't me. It was all me. And going through this experience, while I was there going through it, it was like 300,000 years. 300,000 years or more. It was like you could see the beginning, you could see things being spit out and created, worlds being created. You could see worlds being destroyed, sucked into black holes. You could see things existing and things. I mean, it was at all the different stages of basic creation, you know, being where it's at and being destroyed. Like, wow, just like in the scriptures in India, you know, the creation and everything else. And I knew that the purpose of this group that I was traveling with was to periodically send members out from this group back into Earth or Earth-like worlds, places, to help evolve the spiritual evolution of the places they went. So their job was on the spiritual level to get people rolling, right? From the dark ages to whatever, right? But we also saw some other bodies of light out there. I mean, this job of this group was to help evolve people spiritually, but there was a group of science, you know, helping to evolve, you know, like Leonardo da Vinci kind of people, you know, evolving the arts and sciences and technology and all that, as, you know, helping the world of creation progress, right? And there was those philosophers, and then there was music. There was all these God-given talents and abilities that these groups were cultivating and bringing in and helping to evolve wherever they went to learn these things, especially like music, which like, you kind of wonder how music gets started all over the world. Everybody has drums, everybody has flutes, everybody learned how to play a stringed instrument, everybody sings. What? Where'd they all learn how to do that, right? It's interesting. So that's what it was. And I was totally at peace. And then I remembered I had a wife and 2 children. I remembered I had a personal history. I remembered I had an I-ness. I had an I. I had an ego. And I got sucked right back into my body. I felt like a million pounds now. And I broke down and I cried. I cried for hours. My wife couldn't understand it, but it was like I was pulled back because I had memories. I had an ego that remembered a history. And I was no longer the one. I was Reverend Bill. I was Bill. Because I had this history. And I came back and I knew all kinds of stuff. And about an hour later, I knew a lot less. It's like, okay, now some things you remember in 5 years, I was told. Some things you remember in 10. Some things you remember in 30. Some things you remember, but you'll never be allowed to speak them. And some things will never let you remember as long as you're still in the mind. So it's been kind of piecing it together since. That's when about 25, 30 years later, I wake up and I go, I had this dream and I go, I didn't travel, it was expansion. But that took me 25, 30 years to figure out it wasn't traveling. But traveling, stuff's coming at you, meaning stuff's going away from you, right?
Right.
It all be coming at you from every direction. So you're going so fast this way, everything's coming at you. So that was a rainbow body experience. That moved me more than any near-death experience. It got me to realize that this thing is a lot more eternal and huge and planned than people realize, that there really is ultimately a plan for the creation. And there is kind of a beginning in the creation, and it takes you to a resolution, only to start again. Stop, start, whatever, big bang, suck it up the black hole. But everything it's constantly renewing itself. So that really shook me up to the point where I realized how insignificant anything that happens to us in life here is, even pain. It is ultimately, it's all so much bigger than us. And then we realize there is no individual I. That's what gets you in trouble. It dawned on me. I go, oh, it's me remembering my personal history, meaning I remember my ego. And if you have an ego, you have a body. And you have a history, and you have an I-ness. And if you have an I-ness, that means you're separated from other people because they're not I. They're not you. But when you reach this state, called samadhi, called whatever, you reach a state where you realize all is one. There's nothing outside of you. It's all you. And when you're there, and you realize, well, if there's nothing else, and there's no one else, then there is no reincarnation. Because there's no birth, there's no death, there's no heaven, there's no hell. It's just God. And everything else is just an illusion, a play. But you can't tell that to somebody who's lost a child, or somebody's lost a spouse, or somebody's dying of cancer, because they have an identity with themselves. They have an ego, they have a body, they have pain mentally, physically, and spiritually. And they have birth, and they have death, and they have heaven, and they have hell. They believe it all. It's all become of them. But when they wake up, ultimately wake up, like this great awakened researcher that's interviewed me here, when you eventually wake up, there's only one. I call that my theory of oneness. There's only one. There is nothing but one. What do you believe in? I just believe in one. One what? One. There's no let time, past, present, and future. They're just now the one. There's nobody else playing this game except God. God is you, God is me, God is us. We are one. Now, obviously, I have a body. Obviously, I have pain. I have suffering. I have birth. I have death. That is the penalty for believing all this and falling into this delusion. Waking up is apparently not so easy. And that's the trick. So anyway, so that's the rainbow body experience.
So from that perspective, what's the what do we get out of coming to Earth and not remembering that? What's the benefit of that?
You know, that's a question. That's the $1 trillion question, not the $1 billion question or the $1 million. That's like, who made God? Why are we here? What is our purpose? People come, I come with stuff. People ask, what's your purpose? We're here to love and serve. Yeah, okay, great. That's a nice, quick answer. But really, why did God create us? Because when he created us, it was all, because he's supposed to be the all-loving God, right? Well, I'm looking out there at war where people are getting blown up and tortured and burned and, you know, and really crazy stuff happens to them. And I'm going, wow, that's all from God too. You can't just give God credit for butterflies and angels and unicorns. You know, God's also mosquitoes and rats and disease. And I mean, everything. If it's all him, it's all. So why? I think God is entertaining God. I don't have a better answer than that. And nobody can tell me if I'm right or wrong. And if somebody had an answer, they don't. Because to understand that, you have to be in a no mind state. You can't answer that kind of question philosophically. Well, we can answer that question philosophically. So it's, what do you think is the purpose? Why do you think we're here? Whatever you think is okay. I'm here to love and serve. That's what I tell people. And I follow that because I have no idea other than we're here to love, to find our oneness again. But why did we get lost in this delusional highway in the first place? Why did, you know, God invented us and then he made all these temptations wrong for us. You know, temptation to do drugs and alcohol. That's really a temptation. It makes people feel good, right? And it wasn't like he made these things and they taste terrible and they make you feel yucky. No, made them good. You know, sex goes from lust and love to lust, you know. So there's like, wow, why? I don't know. But I do know there's only one thing I really understand, and that's love. I know when I'm loved, and I know when I'm giving love, and I know what it feels like to be loved. That's it. There's everything else is philosophy. I believe that whatever you accomplish, if it's done with love in your heart and with the idea that you're accomplishing things for the love of God, for God, to God, from God, you're going to be successful no matter what the results are. But if you're working for the paycheck and you're working for the man, that's all you're going to get. You're just going to get that level of satisfaction. It's just a material world. So just become the more loving self. Simple philosophy. Anyway, so that's it on my beliefs on that. And we create, here's the thing. Another whole subject here. People come to me with problems all the time. I want to manifest stuff. I go, you're manifesting stuff. Oh, no, I got all these problems. No, you manifested it all. There is nothing happened to you without your help. You've manifested everything that's happened to you in your life. There's people that think manifested, you go to their house, they got all these magnets on their refrigerator with a picture of the the body they want to have, the car they want to own, the house they want, the job they want, this thing, that thing. And they're going to manifest all these things by thinking positive, putting pictures and all that stuff. I said, when's the last time you just thought, I want to manifest love? I want to manifest joy. I want to manifest happiness. So they're chasing things to manifest. And then when things come to them, like, bad things happen and they go bankrupt, this happens, blah, 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 they get arrested. Oh my God, no, what happened? You manifested it. I'm sorry. You've created everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You've created it all. It's all happened to you. It's yours. Own it. People don't want to own it. It's always somebody else. It's my parents. It's the army. It's my PTSD. It's every decision that you ever made, every thought that you ever had manifests itself at some level. And the more power and the more energy you put into it, the quicker that manifestation comes. You're creating a world and an energy in that world that attracts that frequency. You're going to be hanging around people that think like you and influencing you to do other things. So that's one thing I'll say about religion. You hang around a religious group, you're going to pick up like vibrations and like frequencies from them, and it'll maintain you at that, whatever you believe. Mm-hmm. So be careful who you hang around with. Company, meaning even the movies you watch, the books you read, the videos you watch on YouTube, all these things manifest within you your present now. You may not be able to connect it, as and no, they do. And if you believe in multiple lifetimes, you have to realize this thing goes back a long ways. Well, why all this stuff happening to me? Why, if you go back, your actions, your thoughts, your deeds, nobody gets, like everybody, they're all upset with these politicians. These guys are getting away with this, that guy. Nobody gets away with anything. You just want to be the judge, the jury, the executioner. You want to see it come. You want to see something happen. Well, sometimes you don't see the results. Maybe it comes a couple of lifetimes down the road. But nobody gets away with anything. So it's like these guys that win a $1 million lottery. Not luck. They had it coming. They manifested that through their behavior, through their generosity, something someplace along the line in the past, even if you can't draw a line to it. There's no random good luck. Mm-hmm. It's like divine grace. It's not random at all. Your repentance and your love, you've created that grace. There's been an action on somebody's part that's created that love and that grace. Mm-hmm. So tell people, you want to manifest your life? Start now. Start and choose wisely what you want to manifest. Whatever you want to manifest, things, cars, jobs. Well, money makes you comfortable, but money doesn't guarantee happiness. Not having money, okay, that's another whole thing. Not having enough creates a lot of misery. But even that, if your mind is in a certain place, you can handle it. But I see too many unhappy people committing suicide that are multimillionaires. Mm-hmm. They had all they wanted. Fame, fortune, more money than they could ever spend. And yet they commit suicide. Why? There you go.
How important is forgiveness?
Forgiveness is probably the foundation and the cornerstone, if it could be both the foundation and the cornerstone, of the truest virtue of all, love. If you can't forgive, starting with yourself, number one, you got to forgive you. People I've found that are very intelligent, high IQ people are the hardest people to convince that they got to forgive themselves, because they go, well, I'm smarter than that. I knew better than to do that. I shouldn't have did that. I know better, Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself forgive others. In forgiving others, the only person that you're really, truly gifting is yourself. People got this idea, when forgive people, you got to call them up on the phone. Well, I forgive you, you son of a bitch, all these things you did to me, I forgive you. I mean, that's just ego, right? No. Forgiveness is something you do softly, quietly, within.
Mhm.
I forgive you for these things. Unless somebody's on a 12-step program where they're required to, confront you and say, I'm sorry, I did these things. Give it to them. All right. But people come to me, I don't expect people to ask for forgiveness. I've already forgiven them. I'm not holding any grudges. I've moved on. If they're still hanging on to it, that's them. But most people that have a grudge from childhood, whatever, from abuse, from whatever happened to them, they're a prisoner of the past. They're not going to move forward. They're not enjoying the now. The only person they're hurting is themselves, because most people don't realize the person that they're angry with and everything probably doesn't give them a second thought. They've been carrying this thing, anger, for 30 years. I bet the person's never thought about it for 29 years. I mean, it's a one-sided thing. I bet people, the families, they don't talk to each other because something happened 20, 30 years ago and they can't remember what it was, but it was important at the time, they say. Well, if you don't remember what it was, what's the point? And there's things that people do to you, tread upon you, hurt you, injure you in various spiritual, emotional, physical ways, that you don't want to give them a sense of approval. It's not approval. It's just you're releasing them from any debt they have to you. It's just, you're done with it. Let them handle it. You're done. You're releasing you from that. You're taking you out of the equation, which means you don't have to call them and say, I forgive you. It's not about them. It's about you. So think about the world. We fought the Japanese. They bombed Pearl Harbor, tortured a lot of people in the Pacific. The Germans, look what they did to everybody. Wow. Who's the United States' biggest allies? Japan, Germany, right? Mm-hmm. We had to forgive. And think about the Japanese. We blew them up with 2 atomic bombs. And Tokyo, 100,000 people died in fire bombings. Basically, we napalmed the capital, all the wooden buildings. They moved on. I went back to Vietnam in 2002 and broke bread with and had meals with Viet Cong, North Vietnamese retired officers, politicians, my enemy, so-called enemy, met their grandchildren, their children, had a wonderful time. They didn't hate me, I didn't hate them. They were soldiers doing their job, patriots. I mean, they got to be, I admire them, in fact, because I'm thinking, would I be in one of those tunnels underground with B-29s bombing above you with the ground, all these bombs going off? I mean, my God, and napalm being dropped on you. No hate. Mm-hmm. No hate. And when you go there and you realize that in 2002, 67% of the country was born after the war. I don't know what it is now. I mean, there's not very many old people left. But all the young people, oh, America, tell us about Michael Jackson. Tell us about this. Tell us about the movies. I mean, I just did an interview with a group of high school students, honor students from Hanoi, from the high schools in Hanoi. And they did a YouTube video, and asked me questions and stuff. And they said they'd contacted over 100 Vietnam vets, and I was the only one that said I would interview with them. Only one.
Wow.
I'm going, that's pretty bad. It's bad. You got to talk to these people. Mm-hmm. You got to love them. And then when you meet people, somebody's like, in Vietnam, I met their grandkids, great-grandkids. They're just like me. They're all just like you because they are you. Someday you will see Ukraine soldiers and Russian soldiers. This is my dream. Someday at some level, there will be love. There will be conversations. There's a lot of old wounds there, and it's been going on for probably 100 years there, the Ukrainians and the Russians. People don't realize there's a long history there.
Mhm.
And eventually somebody's got to bury the hatchet. Eventually somebody's got to say, that was generations ago. It's not us. Move on.
Well, the good thing is that with technology, a lot of the younger generations are able to talk to people on the other side of the world. So when you can talk to people, you're a lot less likely to go to war with them.
Well, I tell you what, there's been this since World War I, where they had the League of Nations was going to end all the wars, and then United Nations was going to end all wars, and
Right.
NATO was going to be the peacekeepers. All right, so we don't have a big war, but we have a lot of little wars. They're big to the people that their house is blown up.
Yeah. Proxy wars.
Yeah, I mean, this is ugly. It's terrible. But thing is, again, wars are part of the delusion of being a human, of living a life here. Wars, disease, riots, pain, suffering. It's all part of living in this world and trying to find our own evolution, our own perfection. But we as a group, I think, contrary to what people see on the news, we're closer today than we ever been. People go, oh no, it's terrible. Look what you got going on. I go, wait a minute. When I was born, we just dropped 2 atomic bombs a few months before. We haven't dropped a bomb since I've been born on people. We had a World War II. We had 100 countries at war or more. I mean, everybody was fighting. Destruction everywhere. We got it localized. We got a proxy war going on between NATO and Russia in the Ukraine. We had a proxy war going on between us and China in Vietnam. You see what's happening here? And we got all kinds of little wars going on in Africa. People don't even know about. I mean, there's all kinds of violence in Africa.
Yeah.
But there's no world war. It's an interesting world. But if you focus on that every day, then that's all you're going to see. If you focus on garbage, that's all you're going to see. It's like when I was in India, it's in Calcutta, and it was just really smelly and it was terrible. There was all this stuff going on. There was this sadhu there standing there. He was very much at peace. I said, look, it smells like crap here. Just, the noise. And he says, and he points down the street. You see that park over there? There's jasmine growing there. That's all I smell. That's all I see. That's what I focus on. And he had stuff going all around him. Just focused on that. He just focused on the good.
Mm-hmm.
When you start focusing on the garbage, that's all you'll see.
That's true.
You watch cable news every day, pretty soon you think the whole world's nuts. And if you start watching cable news, you'll start hating the other political side, because whatever channel you watch, it's going to program to hate the other guys. I mean, it's both sides, right?
Yeah.
So if you focus on love and goodness, you will find it wherever you go. You will manifest it in your life.
Yeah, I mean, you got some fantastic stories, man. It's really incredible.
We haven't touched them, trust me.
All right, Bill, let's talk a little bit about what you're working on now.
All right, I just wanted to point out that I'm into a new area now. Well, new. It's rediscovered what I really kind of feel like my life purpose is, and that's getting into this teaching people to self-heal. I'm not going around the world. I'm going around the world, but I'm not going around the world telling people that I'm healing anybody. Just the opposite. I'm going around the world, and everything I do, all my advertisement, the titles of all the things I do, it's always about self-healing, self-awareness, self-realization. It's all about people being in charge of their own life decisions, whether it is about health or spirituality or success or failure. I'm teaching people to own everything. But on health and healing, I had a dream right at the end of COVID, 2022, the summer. And I woke up and I realized it was time for me to go out and do what I really wanted to do for a long time. And that's go out there and actually give free workshops around the world. And I've been to India and going to Europe and everywhere else across the United States, everywhere. And I'm giving away these techniques that I've learned from my time living in Hawaii, from a kahuna that I learned it from back in the 60s, and from the yoga I picked up and the techniques I picked up from yoga, practicing yoga and meditation, and from other techniques and practices that I've learned in India or in dreams, in visions, in mystical experiences. And I kind of put them all together to provide people tools that they could use to heal themselves. I tell people the healer is within them, the guru, the teacher is within them. The trouble with most people is their mind is so delusional, they can't hear that inner voice and they don't believe that voice. So I provide to them mentorship. I mentor them. And if they listen and follow what I'm doing, then they can actually heal themselves. It's not a big pursuit. It's more of discovering trust and faith in your own self and realizing that the power of healing is all about changing your frequency and your energy vibrations. So that's why we're seeing successful stuff going on now worldwide with, Tibetan healing bowls, tuning forks, using sound, music and stuff to kill cancer cells. I mean, they just saw that on 60 Minutes.
Mhm.
So everything is about changing frequencies and vibrations. And some people are doing it through machines, recordings, sound waves, all that stuff. I'm teaching people the ultimate machine is you. Become your own tuning fork. And when your body and your mind and your spirit are all vibrating together, then you have good health, mentally, physically, and spiritually. So when it gets out of whack, that's when the problems come. You've manifested your ill health. You can also uncreate it. You can create your health. So that's what I'm doing worldwide. I'm going around and I'm also giving lectures and selling my books. This is my autobiography, Warrior, Spiritual Odyssey, and Alchemy of a Warrior's Heart. This one kind of deals with about a 10-year period where I traveled to India, have a couple of near-death experiences, and meet gurus, mystical people. Magical, supernatural, mystical things happen. I'm writing on a new book, I Still Remember Tomorrow, which is kind of like my statement coming out of COVID. Yes, we still got a tomorrow, right? I still remember it's tomorrow. And so I'll be continuing my world journey, my world tour. I just did the East Coast. I was in New York and North Carolina, and I was in Texas. I'll be going to Florida, going to New Mexico, I'm going to Arizona, Seattle, going back down to San Diego, probably LA. And I'm probably going back to North Carolina again next year. But meanwhile, I'll be back to India, Germany, UK, and some other places. Eventually the South Pacific a couple of years from now. The idea is to take what I'm teaching on the road. It's not the best way to teach it because you can't get it to a mass amount of people. That's why I've been doing videos. So you go to my videos, and I've been posting videos of these, what I do at the workshops as best I can. But when you capture something that's a live event where there's energy and you put it on a video, you lose a part of that energy because it's in the touching, the hands-on, the radiant energy exchange that goes on between myself and those that are there. It's not impossible to feel on a video, but more difficult. It's not as reticent and available. So that's what we're doing. Ultimately, what I'm looking for as I go out worldwide is I'm looking for those people that are fairly evolved, at least evolved enough where healing is something they want to do. It's not their ego pushing it. They want to do something for the love of mankind. And I want to teach people to do what I'm doing, actually teach them to do what I'm doing, going out and teaching this stuff. And so I'm looking for practitioners. So I'm gathering names. And so when I get through traveling, in the next couple of years, I'll be mentoring people and getting them to a level, and then maybe create a book for them, instruction book, resources, so that they can go out. And when I die, what I've learned is not gone when I'm gone.
Mhm.
I want the traditions of what I've discovered, rediscovered, or created to go on. So I got a group of people coming to New Mexico in September, the first, I think it's the 9th to the 10th of September, in New Mexico, Corvallis, is that what it's called? Corvallis?
Oh, Corrales.
Yeah, outside of Albuquerque.
Mhm.
Several people there that want to carry on and do this, but I'm going to give a general workshop so they see that process. And then the next day I'm going to spend some time with them. And we're going to start taking that at that level. Because I know there's people out there that are looking for the opportunity to serve,
Mhm.
to love, to give. I also realize that not everybody can do it like I'm doing it for free. I'm retired. I'm not looking for money. I'm doing it. If people donate, that's good. If I break even, that's wonderful. But I know I realistically can't expect to find somebody like myself that's willing to spend their time, their money, rent churches and buildings and go travel around the world and give it away. No, not asking people to do that. If they want to do that, that's up to them. But I expect people to be able to at least break even, or if they're going to make a living at it, good. It's okay. It's all right to make money. For me, I'm gifting what I'm doing. I just can't charge. So
Mhm.
it not for the healing stuff. So that's
Yeah.
where I'm at. So,
Oh, that's interesting. So if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
okay, they can go to my website, which is www.revbillmcdonald.com, or they can go find me on my Facebook page, which is Rev Bill McDonald, or they can go to any of my, look at my bunch of podcasts I've done. I'll have my email address on there, which is Huey, Huey 576 at gmail.com. That's named after my helicopter. It was 576. So it's Huey 576 at gmail.com. I so far have responded to everybody that's written me. I may have missed one or two once in a while, but I get thousands a month, and it's getting harder and harder. I get up at 2, 3 in the morning trying to answer emails. So it's going to get to be a point where send me something, I will read it, and you might get short acknowledgments, but I'm past that point of being able to have everybody just call me up and tell me what their personal problems are. I can't solve all the personal problems. So that's why I'm doing videos. That's why I'm doing books. So if you discover my YouTube channel, you will find that I have about 150 videos on there, and they cover a whole bunch of subjects. They're not professionally done. They're just unedited, one take, no script, no notes. Boom, here it is. And I'm still getting over 1 million views. So they're genuine. Maybe that's what people feel. They're authentic, but they're not flashy. They're not glitzy. They're certainly not professional. It's just me. But that's how I deliver it. So if people are looking to learn about self-healing, definitely contact me. People are always looking to be healed. I have no trouble finding you. Trust me, you'll find me. But people that want to do the work and help others, that's kind of where I'm at. So that's where in 2.5 years, I will be 80 years old. And at 80 years old, I want to be able to say, okay, no more mass group things. Now we're going to have retreats and workshops for people that want to learn how to help others. In other words, extend myself through others, the hands of others. So that's where we're going.